This video is going to look at Andrew Marvell's short poem written in honor of Milton's Paradise Lost, which subsequently became used as a preface to the 1674 edition of the poem. The original edition of the poem came out in a 10-book version, and it was revised by Milton and republished in a 12-book version, the 12 books corresponding to Virgil's Aeneid more closely. The differences between the two poems, why Milton began with 10 and then went to 12, that's the subject of a different discussion altogether. I'm more concerned in this video just to read Marvell's tribute to Milton and give a sense of how the great poet Marvell recognized the genius of Mr. Milton. And so I am going to put the poem up on the screen for you here, if I can manage to get this technology to work here. And here it is on Mr. Milton's Paradise Lost. You'll see that it's written in rhyming couplets, but at the conclusion of the poem acknowledges that Milton not only did not write in couplets, but needn't have done so and was right not to have done so. If you've read Milton's Paradise Lost, you'll see at the beginning of that work a long apologetic for the mode in which he does write it, which is in blank verse. So without rhyme, explaining that rhyme is the product of a barbaric age, in other words, his own, which is rather interesting considering how we tend to esteem the culture of this period, at least I'll just say myself, the Renaissance and the, which extends from the 16th century all the way into this period, and of which men like Marvell and Donne and Herbert and company are some of the fairest flowers thereof. But Milton overlooks that and sees the barbarism of his age and will not bind himself to rhyming couplets because, as he notes, among other things, neither did his forebears, Homer or Virgil. They did, however, use meter, and so does he. But without further ado, let me read Marvell's little preface, what became the preface, but really is a tribute, a panegyric to Milton, in the same way that we're going to see if I can get to it. He wrote a panegyric to Oliver Cromwell in his first anniversary. It's a long political poem, though, and I'm going to set aside some time to deal with that on its own because it's too long to deal with in the way I'm going to here, which is to read it and then comment. So without further ado, when I beheld the poet blind, yet bold, in slender book his vast design unfold, Messiah crowned, God's reconciled decree, rebelling angels, the forbidden tree, heaven, hell, earth, chaos, all. The argument held me a while misdoubting his intent, that he would ruin, for I saw him strong, the sacred truths to fable and old song. So Samson groped the temple's posts in spite, the world o'erwhelming to revenge his sight. Yet as I read, soon growing less severe, I liked his project, the success did fear. Through that wide field how he his way should find, or which lame faith leads understanding blind, lest he perplex the things he would explain, and what was easy he should render vain. Or if a work so infinite he spanned, jealous I was that some less skillful hand, such as disquiet always what is well, and by ill imitating would excel, might hence presume the whole creation's day to change in scenes and show it in a play. Pardon me, mighty poet, nor despise my causeless, yet not impious surmise. But I am now convinced, and none will dare within thy labors to pretend a share, for thou hast not missed one thought that could be fit, and all that was improper dost admit, so that no room is here for writers left, but to detect their ignorance or theft. That majesty which through thy work doth reign draws the devout, deterring the profane. And things divine thou treats of in such state as them preserves, and thee inviolate. At once delight and horror on us seize, thou sing'st with so much gravity and ease, and above humane flight dost soar aloft with plumes so strong, so equal, and so soft. The bird named from that paradise you sing so never flags, but always keeps on wing. Where couldst thou words of such a compass find? Whence furnish such a vast expense of mind? Such just heaven thee, like Tiresias to requite, rewards with prophecy thy loss of sight. Well might thou scorn thy readers to allure with tinkling rhyme of thy own sense secure, while the town bays writes all the while and spells, and like a pack horse tires without his bells. Their fancy like our bushy points appear, the poets tag them, we for fashion wear. I too, transported by the mode, offend, and while I meant to praise thee, must commend. Thy verse created like thy theme sublime in number, weight, and measure needs not rhyme. So this splendid little tribute by Andrew Marvell is rightly regarded as a great poem in its own right, and engages with the very subject matter of Marvell's, rather Milton's poem, and his own concerns about the subject matter, and also the mode in which it is written. Note that it's not only the content that Milton was concerned with, but also the mode in which the content was presented. In other words, the form. The form being the epic is not Marvell's concern, but rather the such delicate matters as the not just the lineation, but the rhyme scheme, and the vehicles, the metaphors, and so forth, all of which Marvell, after initial skepticism, decided that he liked rather well after all. In a sense, the little poem here doesn't require much by way of explanation because it, quite frankly, is not complicated. It records his thoughts, presenting them in terms of rhyming couplets, and seems more concerned once he understands the subject matter of the poems to with the form of the poem rather than anything to do with the content. Put it back up here again. So you can see that he is anxious, probably because he's taken on an epic. Now, it's not Milton's deciding to write an epic does not make Milton that unusual for the day. Others sought and attempted the epic genre as well. Tasso's Jerusalem Liberated is certainly a precedent there. But Milton's choice of subject matter, that of the fall of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree, which brought death into our world and all our woe with loss of Eden till one greater man restore us, is one that Marvell, as a co-religionist, is going to be anxious about, that he should seek to tackle this and do it justice. And he suggests at the outset his concern and makes the biblical analogy to Samson, who out of spite grasps the posts of the temple and destroys the world out of vengeance. Is it out of concern for Milton's blindness or the greatness of the subject matter? Well, it seems like he likes the project, to use his lines, but the success did fear. And why so? Because he fears that there may be more reason than faith in it. How he should find over which the lame faith leads understanding blind, lest he perplex the things he would explain, and that what was easy he should render vain, so that he should be over rationalizing the account and not being sufficiently biblical in his treatment. In Marvell's estimation, Milton did not fail in his attempt to allow faith to lead understanding, and on the contrary, he did it rather well. And he was then concerned that he present it rather in the form of a play and chop and change the scenes too greatly. And yet he finds that Milton's reworking of some of the features of Paradise Lost and presenting it in a pageant of sorts, a play, does not do injustice to the biblical text, but rather amplifies it, brings it out. And so much, he says, so he says that I am now convinced, and none will dare within thy labors to pretend a share. For thou hast not missed one thought that could be fit, and all that was improper dost omit. And so much so that he says that there's no room for writers left, but to detect their ignorance or theft. This is high praise indeed. He hasn't just written an epic then, he has more or less cornered the market on good expression and good thought. And so this is, again, a panegyric, of course. It's a praise poem to Mr. Milton, in the same way that he'll write a praise poem to Oliver Cromwell in various places. And it is chiefly because of his sympathy for his religious convictions and how they are uttered. And he says that the inspiration remains strong throughout. It remains on wing. It never flags. It's always on wings. And so he praises, among other things, the form in which he articulates himself. And in the end, addresses the subject matter that Milton begins his introduction to Paradise Lost with, which is his apology for what will come, which is that he does not use rhyme. Marvell, even in the end, assents to that and agrees that he has lost none of the power of the poem, because he's preserved number, weight, and measure, and does not need rhyme. So this is a fit tribute by a great poet to another great poet. And I don't have a great deal to add to it aside from saying that and bring it to your attention, because I think it is pretty self-explanatory. So I'll just leave it with that.